It's time for Talkin Tauntauns, your Star Wars source at AIPTcomics.com.
Hey, what's up, everyone? Welcome to another episode of Talkin Tauntauns, the official Star Wars podcast for AIPTcomics.com. I am JJ Travers, one of your hosts, joined as always by Connor Christensen and Jim Lehane. Today we have a really special episode for you guys. I can't wait. I've been excited for this episode since we knew it was happening. We're going to be talking to the extremely talented and lovely Alyssa Wong. She is the writer for the Marvel Doctor Aphra comic series. If you haven't read it yet, you are seriously missing out. If you can read it before listening to the interview, great. If you can't, not the end of the world. Not too many spoilers here. But I think you're going to love it. It's coming up next, so sit tight. Don't go anywhere. And today on the show, we have a very special guest with us. We're all super excited about this. The writer for one of our absolute favorite comic books, Star Wars Doctor Aphra. We have Alyssa Wong with us. She is an award-winning writer. Her stories have won the Nebula Award, the World Fantasy Award, the Locus Award. She's written for Blizzard on the Overwatch franchise. She's written comics, Adventure Time, Marvel, Star Wars. And as Connor found out last night, she writes a lot of excellent short stories. Alyssa, thank you so much for being on the show.
Yay. Hi, thanks for having me. I'm really stoked.
So are we. Connor and I have I think we've agreed through multiple Star Wars podcasts and episodes that Aphra is our favorite character to come to the franchise under Disney's ownership. And it's interesting because Star Wars fans can be, as we all know, a little resistant to change. But we've all agreed that, and I've yet to find anyone who goes against this, but it feels like Aphra was universally loved by everyone right when she arrived, and that's never changed, which is a really unique thing, unfortunately, for a lot of new Star Wars characters. A lot of people... it takes some time to warm up for them, like Ahsoka and Rey. But right off the bat, when Aphra dropped in, people just loved her. She was such a unique and funny character. What was your first introduction to the character?
So my first introduction to the character was actually at Blizzard. I think that a lot of comics, to be completely honest, like ongoing comics, had been a little bit intimidating for me to get into because I had a lot of friends who were super into them, and I love reading manga, and but I think that the amount of back issues of a lot of comics made me a little bit nervous, and also because of comics fans love comics and it's awesome, and I think that I had some bad experiences with some folks who were like, well, you're not a real fan if you don't know XYZ. And I'm like, I'm sorry, I haven't had the chance to read it yet. But being
the wonderful quote real fan argument.
The gatekeepers at comic shops are brutal. It's and I that sounds playful, but I mean that in the worst way. It's just people, like you said, they're intimidating. It's there are thousands of issues to read. I'm sorry, I don't know every single thing.
Mm-hmm. And I think that, it's hard to figure out where to start, too. Unless you have a friend who's like, hey, there's this one thing that I really like. Maybe you should start with this one thing instead of, the giant monolith that is all these really cool comics going on. So that's kind of what happened to me. I went to Blizzard, and I was working in the story and franchise development department, and... there were a lot of folks there who were super into comics, and they were like, you have to read these. Oh my God, there's this character you're going to love. She's great. So the writers there introduced me to Doctor Aphra, and I fell in love. She's so much fun.
That sounds about how JJ and Jim and I found her as well. It was just because I read comics growing up, and then when I went away to college, kind of stopped reading them. And then when I graduated college, I got back into comics and realized that Marvel was doing Star Wars comics. And I want to say it was my dad who told me is like, you have to check out the Vader series simply for this new character they introduced. She's going to be huge. And then sure enough, like same thing. Immediately, I was like, oh yeah, no, she's the best. Like she, as JJ mentioned, like not only my favorite character to come out of the Disney, the Disney era of Star Wars, but like a very close second only to Han Solo for my favorite character, period. And the fact that she has been able, and what I think is awesome is the fact that you went as somebody who wasn't a comic reader and became a comic reader for this one character. I think is probably one of the coolest aspects of her as a character is that it takes people who aren't comic readers and gets them into comics, and more people reading comics is always a good thing.
Yeah. I think I'm a character first person, so like if I find someone who I'm really interested in or who I think is super fun, I'm gonna follow them. Like basically no matter what comic they're in or how many issues, I'm like, I'm in. I'm done. Like we're riding this train to the end.
Aphra's great too because she does have a lot of people kind of writing for her, so she pops up a lot more. Because like when you look at Ahsoka has been almost locked down by Dave Filoni, who's another fan favorite character. But Aphra, she's popping up in like some of the short stories, some of the books. She has the comic series of which there's a few different writers, and so like this is great. She kind of gets around.
Mm-hmm. I think it's really cool. I feel like you can really tell when different people write her because they all have something really interesting that they bring to the table. I got to read the manuscript for Sarah Kuhn's Doctor Aphra novel, the audio novel, and I loved her relationship with Sana in that, and I love the quick wit and cruelty in Kieran Gillen's like first run, and Cy Spurrier did that really awesome work with Tolman, and I mean, it's been really cool to watch that all play out and then get to build off of it and incorporate bits into like the stuff that I get to write now.
Now speaking of these other writers who have worked on it, and we I think 2 episodes ago we did a deep dive into Sarah Kuhn's audio novel and how it expanded on the relationship between Aphra and Sana in a way we weren't expecting. But did you? So obviously you read the runs, but did you like talk to any of the other writers and kind of get a feel for how they approach the character, or did you watch Indiana Jones a bunch of times to get ready? Like what was the preparation?
Except the Crystal Skull.
Yeah, except obviously we don't we kind of just we let that go.
It's not that bad. Get over it.
If you have to say that, it's that bad. But yeah, so what did that prep like? Did you have those conversations with the creators? Did you kind of lean on them, or did you more of just read their writing and then kind of go from there?
So I didn't actually get to talk to them. I did read their writing, and then I also did this deep dive where like I read everything in like 3 days, just that,
Nice.
from top to bottom, and I didn't get the chance to read the audiobook until, which is a weird thing to say, until probably a couple months ago. But I know Sarah, like, outside of Aphra stuff, so that was pretty wild. Like, I had no idea that she was the author until I, like, saw her name on the manuscript, and I was like, wait a sec. But yeah, no, it was a lot of just, like, going deep and, like, pushing everything else out of my head but Aphra. Talking to my spouse a lot and being like, oh my god, can you imagine this, that, and then this happened. And my spouse was like, okay. I haven't read these
Great.
comics, but that sounds cool.
Who are you talking about?
Yeah, just this girl who's living in my head for the next forever, I guess.
So, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Oh, no, go ahead.
You mentioned you're a former Blizzard employee. I went to my first BlizzCon 2 years ago, had a blast. I've been playing their games since Diablo and Warcraft when they first came out. I know the huge expectations and the pressure that fan base puts on Blizzard for their games because they've always had such a high bar for the quality of their games. Do you feel like the pressure of being in an environment where you knew the expectation from the fan base was sky high helped you step into writing a book with another franchise, Star Wars, where the fans have really high expectations?
Yes, definitely. I think that I've had a number of, like, I think that, you know, in some ways I've had a number of run-ins with different fandoms, in the sense that, you know, I think that fans are super passionate, and I say this also as a fan, and I think that sometimes that passion can become toxic if people feel like what they love is being threatened in one way or another, and one kind of threat is change. Yeah, I've definitely felt pressure from different areas, and I think that, like you said, have written for like franchises with big fandoms, where there is that expectation, is a really daunting task, and I think it takes some time to get used to. It's sort of like living in a pressure cooker where you're slowly becoming like mushy and soft. But I will say that the Overwatch fandom was always very kind to me. They're super nice and supportive.
That's great to hear.
Yeah, I think that like I've been through like a couple of like, you know, big media events where I like had to kind of lock down stuff, or just like kind of watch my back online for a while. But if anything, like that's just sort of, at this point, it's old hat, and I'm like, it's terrible, but it happens, so I'm like ready to roll with the punches.
That is good, because as we all know, Star Wars fans can be, let's just call a spade, can be absolutely absurd and toxic and ridiculous. But luckily, as JJ pointed out, for the most part, there has been nothing but positivity around Doctor Aphra. The only kind of negative fan interaction I've had around Doctor Aphra was at New York Comic Con 2 years ago. I was looking for the Black Series toy, and I went up to one of the toy like vendors, and I was like, "Hey, I'm looking for this Hasbro Black Series figure. Do you have the Doctor Aphra figure?" And he said, and I quote, "I don't carry Legends characters." And I was like, "Sir, I don't want to get violent, but how dare you? How dare you?" And I almost, like, I went, "Well, she's not Legend." He goes, "Well, I've never heard of her." And I was like, "Whoa!" Anyway, that's a tangent. But speaking of that pressure around the Star Wars characters, obviously Aphra is in this unique position as she is the only character. Not the only, I guess, but like one of the major characters who has really only been in the comics. She hasn't branched out. I think she is a playable character in one of the mobile games, but I think that's it. That's all she's branched out into. So, do you feel having her just be sequestered to the comics, does that lighten that pressure, or does that kind of add to the pressure because there's like this legacy she has?
I think it's both. I think that, you know, I feel the pressure of that legacy because everyone else has done such a great job with her that I'm like, I have to bring my A game. I gotta make it happen. And, you know, hopefully that's happening. You know, I'm having a lot of fun writing her. And I think that the more you write a character, the better you know her. So I feel like every script I write, hopefully, will get better and better as I continue to get to know Aphra and help bring like new elements out of her. At the same time, it is really nice. It's super nice to know that, you know, because she's not in a whole bunch of other mediums, there isn't that additional pressure of, you know, oh, well, I have this impression of her. Oh, well, I have this impression of her based on, like, the TV show versus the comics versus the books versus, like, it's all sort of, I feel like it's easier to keep her constant in the sense that, like, she only exists in primarily one medium with some branch outs. So, yeah, I mean, I really like it. I think there's more freedom. I've seen what people can do in the comic medium, and I'm like, that's great. Now I know those are like my tent poles, and now I'm gonna try to push outside of it too. So it's kind of nice.
When you speak about that freedom with the character, when you're working with the Lucasfilm Story Group, do you feel like because of the fact that she's not in live action or animated films or TV shows, that when you want to pitch something for the character, like, you know, the kind of Lara Croft, Indiana Jones area that the character's in right now, are they pretty hands off with that, or are they still looking for some to kind of slightly steer you in a certain direction with that?
I think that I think that they're always keeping an eye on making sure that the character stays true to her roots. I think they're really into the sort of Indiana Jones Rumble thing. Since she is first and foremost like an archaeologist, and a really weird archaeologist. But I think that, they've been super open to the stuff that I've pitched them. And they're all super nice. And it's great because, there's so much Star Wars lore that I inevitably have questions like, hey, has anyone ever done anything like this? Or is there like a specific, is there a specific song that XYZ? I didn't end up asking them this question, but I almost asked them if there was like a Star Wars equivalent of like the classic elevator music.
There is. It's the Death March.
I was thinking it was the Cantina song.
Oh, that's so good. Oh.
We gotta get John Williams on here to ask him.
Yeah, I'm sure he'd love to talk to us.
There was this one song, and I can't remember which band it was, but it was called like "Oh Joyful Night, I Ate My Mate," which is like a weird deep cut song that was played by the band that eventually became the Cantina Band, I think.
The Max Rebo Band.
Yeah,
No.
but it was like
Cantina's Modal Nodes.
The something and the God. I can't say it. This is too embarrassing.
No, I love it. That is a deep, deep cut.
It was. It's by Ever Orbis and his Galactic Jizz Whalers. I'm not.
Oh, the Jizz Whalers. That's so prior to Disney taking over, the music in the Cantina was known as Jizz, and
I almost Google searched that on my work computer just now and had to stop.
and for real, but that. And since Disney took over, I think they've changed that for some. I'm not sure why.
That is the perfect example and a great example to support the argument that George Lucas needed oversight, because nobody, when George Lucas said, and I'm not trying to, put down George Lucas, he's the godfather of everything we love. But George Lucas in a meeting at some point said, well, we can't call it jazz. We got to call it something different. And he said jizz instead, and nobody stopped him. It's exactly why it's like, yes, George Lucas needed oversight. Somebody let him name the band the Jizz Whalers.
It's so good.
It's just, that is such amazing. Just wow.
Yeah.
I knew this interview was a good idea.
I'm so sorry. It's yeah.
It's apparently okay. We'll blame Connor.
Yeah, well, that's the best way to do it.
That joyous night, I ate my mate. A hit song by Ever Orbis and his Galactic Jizz Whalers.
You have now you've got to find a way to get them into an arc somewhere.
That's pretty good.
Oh.
What are you listening to? Censored. Can't tell you. Oh.
I need to get another job and find these artifacts because I need to get Jizz Whaler tickets.
Oh boy.
All right. So coming back to this, as you mentioned, or as we mentioned, that clearly Doctor Aphra is an archaeologist. But most of the previous arcs had focused on other things like her love life or origins or and the Empire and the rebellion and all of her activities were there, where you are, at least for right now, clearly going in the archaeologist route, which I love because I grew up wanting to be an archaeologist. And so what are you trying to like primarily provide a character arc that speaks more to her thirst for discovering hidden knowledge and venturing into the unknown? Or like, obviously we don't like want spoilers for future. Like, is this going to continue on with like a strong archaeologist theme?
Ooh, that's a good question. Well, I think that with my new run, I wanted to give new readers a window into Aphra, so that they wouldn't have to have read all 40 issues before that. But hopefully a way to get them interested so they would want to read all of Volume 1. So I went back to like super base character, which is why I think the first arc is archaeology. And also because I really liked that angle. I love drama. I love stories about bitter exes. I love, and so like the Tolvin and Sauna stuff is, I love it. I'm here for it. But I think that if you're coming in to something completely new, like that stuff didn't start getting built until later on in, the first run. So if you're coming in as someone completely new, it can almost feel like you're on the outside if you have to have all of that knowledge like going in. If like people are talking about their exes and you're like, I wasn't here for all 20 issues of this. I went just solid archaeology, and I think that that's going to be a strong theme going forward. But the great thing is, with each arc I get to build new things and build out, and that means, probably more drama. Not going to say more romance, but I'm not going to say not more romance.
Well, as we've seen Aphra, she's a self-destructive romantic, and so
she's a heartbreaker.
She's slightly promiscuous.
Yeah, I can't see romance not coming up.
Mm-hmm.
Well, it's funny that you talk about kind of like making this run accessible to new readers, because when we read the first issue and talked about it a few episodes ago, we were really happy that there is just enough connective tissue to the previous run, which we are huge fans of. I don't think there's a single low point in the first volume of Doctor Aphra, even when you transition from Gillen to Spurrier. I think it continues on a really high note. But what feels great about this new run is that you get back to the basics of like, hey, she's just a morally ambiguous archaeologist in space, and she's got a lot of crazy ex-girlfriends. Boom, that's the story. And that simplicity, like you said, is really welcoming to new readers. And there's just enough hints to the previous runs that you can get new readers to go back and read those previous runs. So it's really refreshing to have that, like, it goes back to what you were saying earlier, where comics can be so intimidating for new readers. But with this run, this is very much like, it's one of the few runs I can recommend to people, because you have so many new number ones that come out that are supposed to be for new readers, but it's like, well, no, you're still going to be confused if you haven't read the previous stuff. But with this new run that you've started with Mariko Cresta is like, no, you can really just jump into this and you won't miss a beat. And I think that's fantastic.
Oh, thank you. That makes me really happy to hear.
Yeah, sorry, that wasn't a question. That was just
yeah. And speaking of not question, I also have a not question. Is that this actually ties in really well. Like many months ago, we were talking about Dr. Aphra and how I had mentioned that I would love to see her just get into an archaeology, like kind of its self-centered archaeology based story. And then all of a sudden your comic starts up and I'm like, this is literally what I asked for. It's like, it was perfect.
Oh, that makes me so happy to hear. Thank you.
All right, so you are right. Okay, you're writing a story that takes place within a relatively short window in Star Wars terms between Empire Strikes Back and Return of the Jedi. and this is, as far as we are aware, as people outside of Lucasfilm, this is, I believe, supposed to be parallel with the other comic book stories that are taking place with Darth Vader, the main Star Wars run, and Bounty Hunters. So are you in communication with them at all? Or kind of, since your character, at least for right now, is kind of on her own, you're just kind of allowed to do your own thing?
Yeah, no, we are definitely in communication. It's kind of nice. It's sort of like having like almost like a class of other writers who are all like working on the same kind of stuff within that same period. And getting to be like, hey, what are you doing? Like, oh, I'm so excited about this thing going on in your run. Like, oh, that's awesome. So yeah, I mean, I think that she has a history with Darth Vader, and I think Greg Pak is doing some amazing stuff with Vader.
We could gush about the Vader run for quite a while. It's so good.
So good.
It's so good. All of the books right now are very good.
I'm really enjoying them all. But yeah, no, we all talk, and I ask them for advice. A lot of them are rather more experienced in comics than I am, but it's nice to just be able to text someone and be like, "Hey, do you know about like, hey, what do you think of this? What do you think of this potential plot idea?" Or like, "Hey, do you have any idea what if Star Wars has any kind of like elevator music or?"
Have you heard of the Jizz Whalers?
Do you have any other songs that you
Rappin'.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's awesome to hear you say that, because I think from watching panels with writers and like watching the High Republic reveal video, there seems to be a really tangible sense of camaraderie and community and like fun amongst the Star Wars writers. So it's really cool to hear that, and that there's this like you put it, I like the idea of like it's kind of just a club of nerds who bounce ideas off each other. So I think that's awesome.
Yeah, it's super fun. I am also I know several of the High Republic folks through not Star Wars as well, like Dan and Jose Older, Justina Ireland, and I'm very excited to see what they're going to do.
Yeah, we've had some lengthy discussions about every little detail we can get our hands on for that. We're super excited for the books, the comics, everything.
We were proudly spot on assuming Yoda was going to get revealed, because they were, they did that thing. They were like, it's going to be no existing characters. Nobody is going to be in it. And we were like, well, wait a minute. I feel like Yoda has to be in it. And then about a month later, they were like, just kidding. Yoda's in it. It's going to be great.
If we can turn the clock back a little bit for you here, do you recall your first memory of being introduced to the Star Wars universe? And was that like your jumping off point for you to become a fan, or did it happen later on?
So my dad and his brother are huge geeks. So I think I saw, God, what was it? So I think that I was probably like 3 or 4 when I first saw Star Wars. Weirdly enough, I feel like the scene in Empire Strikes Back with the Tauntaun is like my very first Star Wars memory.
Oh, geez.
And you are on the right podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, no, but this was kind of like just a thing that we all watched and all the time when we were kids, like me and my cousins. I mean, it's so interesting. I think that, God, I can't remember how old I was when episode 1 came out, but I was young enough to be like, heck yeah, pod racing! I'm like Anakin! And also old enough to be like, Jar Jar Binks scares the heck out of me. Like, I don't
Oh, you just said the magic words with pod racing. I try to make a pod racing reference every episode, and Jim and JJ get so mad because it started off as a joke, but also I really think that pod racing is one of the coolest things in Star Wars that nobody has seemed to touch since. it's like so rad, and the video game is so much fun, and I don't understand why it's not bigger. So I'm so happy that I'm not the only person who saw pod racing as I think I was 8 at the time and was like, that's the coolest thing ever.
Yeah. Oh, dude, pod racing is dope. It's great.
Yes.
Connor, you've been validated, my friend.
Yes, I feel seen.
Since you mentioned Jar Jar, I just have to ask really quick. This was not an interview question, but I have to ask anybody who mentions Jar Jar if the Jar Jar Sith theory has made its way across your desk yet.
Oh my god, the Jar Jar Sith theory. You know what? I don't know. I feel like Jar Jar is chaotic and powerful enough that I'm not ruling anything out.
It's really good. The first time I heard about it, I was like, sure, okay. And then I read it and I was like, oh my god, is Jar Jar a Sith?
I think everybody who read that the first, like, heard about it and was like, that's so dumb. And then you read it and you go, oh god. Oh, this actually makes a lot of sense.
As one of the only people to bring back Jar Jar, I'm going to need Chuck Wendig to go into the Jar Jar Sith spin-off novel.
Yeah.
I need to know. I need to know.
I don't need sleep. I need answers.
I think the 2 and 3 issues 3 and 4, we saw some name drops for the High Republic. We saw, Aphra trying to escape in the High Republic ship. And I can't recall off the top of my head the other reference, but you mentioned a few of the High Republic folks, and you're excited for that publishing initiative. Should we expect to see perhaps more relics of the High Republic and Easter eggs?
Well,
what the tell us?
That's a specific writer tone of voice.
That's I can't answer this without sidestepping around the question.
You can absolutely plead the fifth if you want. We're not here to try to pry anything out of you.
What I will say is that I am also very excited about all the things that are going on with High Republic, and I'm really stoked to see what happens in all the things that people are working on.
Good answer.
Good answer.
Thanks for putting her in that awkward position, JJ.
Hey, we gotta ask.
We have to bring it up at least because it's obviously the one thing that everybody is looking towards in the future, other than the Mandalorian, obviously. But that's the next big thing.
I've gotten to interview Scott Snyder about his comics. I ask a question that he probably shouldn't answer, and he answers it. So you got to take that chance. It's funny. Just a quick offshoot. I interviewed him at New York Comic Con, and he started talking to me about something. And Michael, the press representative that works for DC that I've spoken to several times, just looked over at him and just slowly shook his head and raised his fingers to in between his eyes and just started massaging.
That's the fun of doing interviews at conventions in front of the PR reps is you'll ask a question and you can either feel or see the PR person give a you don't ask that.
The vein is pumping on the forehead. So you got to ask these questions. You never know.
I would have asked it if I were you. So I mean.
Thank you. I feel validated.
This is a validation podcast. I don't know if we told you that. Speaking of looking towards the future of what's going on in Aphra, and these are all just more general questions about the tone and themes of it. Is this first arc featured a little bit of a horror spin with the living city and the buildings built out of bone and the faces, and it's all very creepy. And also a fair amount of your short stories are horror stories in themselves and are pretty creepy. I read the I can't remember the title of it, but the one about the woman who hungers for people's thoughts, and I read that story last night. It's really creepy, and anyone who hasn't read it should go read it because it'll make you think and it'll make you shiver. But do you think there's more room for horror like that in Star Wars, and is that something you want to keep pushing with Doctor Aphra? Because that is something that I enjoyed in this first arc so far, is that there was that kind of creepy horror spin to it.
Yeah, so I love horror. It's my first love.
Woo, same.
So it's something that I really love reading. It's something I really love writing. And I loved how much weird, spooky stuff was in the first run of Doctor Aphra. Between the crystal that thought it was a Jedi, and the weird spore ghost stuff. I think that it's definitely got its roots in Doctor Aphra. But I think that when I was thinking about what I wanted to do for this very first arc, what spin I wanted to put on it, what I wanted to give people, the way that I write my way into new characters is really to think about the things that I really love about them, and to think about the things that I love and how to marry the things that I love and the things I love about that character. So I love the spooky elements. I love Aphra. I was like, let's do a spooky Aphra story. This will be super fun. I think that because of my interest, we'll probably see more weird in the future. Because I definitely don't want to rule it out. Because, I'm here to roll the punches and see what happens. I think it's going to be exciting.
Oh, I love that. Because, I also think back to, you brought up the stuff with the Ordo Aspectu was super cool in the first run. And then I also think about the Screaming Citadel and how that was really leaning into horror, like almost gothic horror. So
that was a really good one.
Yeah, that was awesome. So the thought of oh, cool, we're going to get more. I like how you said it's spooky Star Wars stuff. I love that.
Have you read the Death Troopers or Red Harvest?
No, I haven't.
They're Joe Schreiber's. They're the Legends now. But they're basically the only quote horror Star Wars novels that have ever come out, and so they're fun reads. If you get the chance, I would recommend them.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, no, I have to check that out.
Flesh-eating stormtroopers. I won't say more than that.
Oh wow, no, I'm in. Okay,
yeah.
We're good.
Jim actually sent me his copy. It's on the shelf behind me. Highly recommend it.
I'm always here for a little bit of good cannibalism.
Just a little bit, just a hint.
So since you mentioned your love of horror, that's like the magic word with me. My fiance and I went to the local haunted house every year here. Couldn't do the haunted house, obviously, this year. So instead, they've been screening every Friday, Saturday, Sunday horror movies in a drive-in style in their parking lot, which has been great. So I'm curious, as a horror fan, do you have any Halloween rituals every year? We try to do horror movies one night each night of October and such, in the haunted house.
I don't, which is a huge bummer. I think one thing that it's spooky season, which means that there's always good horror to watch. So I always end up watching it. It's less of a tradition and more of just it's sort of like when clothing stores have their Halloween, here are our cool Halloween dresses or whatever, only for this season. Great, time to buy all of my clothes for the rest of the year. But I did start watching The Haunting of Bly Manor, I think, last night.
Cool.
Oh, did that come out?
It just came out. And I've only seen the first episode. And I loved The Haunting of Hill House. It's one of my favorite things that I've watched, honestly. So I would say in terms of weird traditions, weirdly enough, I feel like a weird Christmas tradition is that I either read or watch something related to The Haunting of Hill House every Christmas and scare the heck out of myself. It's great.
As someone who personally, I am not a horror person whatsoever, but I did watch the Haunting of Hill House, and that was very good. I'm more of the Garfield Halloween special type person.
So you're really excited for Adam Sandler's new Hubie Halloween movie. You're that type of spooky season person.
I am not excited for anything that follows the word Adam Sandler.
Okay.
Oh, you're not a big Uncut Gems fan?
No.
That movie was amazing, to be fair. But what did I? Have you seen Marianne on Netflix, Alyssa? It's a horror series that was made in France. So if you can either watch it subbed or dubbed, it was excellent.
Oh no, I haven't seen that. I'm gonna write that down.
highly
Yeah.
recommend it. I had never heard of it, and a friend of mine recommended it to me, and I watched it with my fiance, and we loved it.
Awesome.
We
Yeah,
don't
no,
just ask questions on this podcast. We provide recommendations. It's a give and take.
I'm curious as far as horror. Are you reading any horror comics or stories or books right now?
let me see. I just picked up a copy of Mexican Gothic, which I believe is by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. Let me check on that really quickly.
Sure.
But I'm very excited for that. One sec. Okay, yeah, it is by Sylvia Moreno Garcia. And it is, I think, I haven't read it yet, so I can't tell you exactly what it is. But it is classic Gothic, weird, spooky, young woman, I believe, haunted house. I could be entirely wrong about this, so don't quote me on this, but I've heard nothing but really great things about it, and I'm very excited to read it. I also I have a short comic in a DC horror anthology that's coming out, I think, next week.
Oh, no way. That's
I didn't
awesome.
know. Yeah, that's
Cool.
rad. I didn't know that.
To be fair, time basically it doesn't exist anymore, so I forgot it was coming out next week.
That's very true. I work from home and often have no idea what day of the week it is.
So it comes out next week.
Right. Yeah,
It will
exactly.
be coming out. That's the point.
Yeah, I think it's coming out on the 13th. It's The Doomed and the Damned. And my short horror story is about Orphan, Cassandra Cain, and Orca. So that should be really fun, I hope. I enjoyed writing it, so it was fun for me.
Yeah, I'll keep my eye out for that.
That is great. Weirdly, I think DC is, I think, not to turn into a horror comic podcast instead of a Star Wars podcast, we'll get back to Star Wars, but I think alongside some of the independent publishers like Boom and Image, I think DC is also really leading the way when it comes to horror with the Hill House collection.
They're so good.
Yeah, Alyssa, I don't know if you've read any of those yet, but I mean, all of them are hits. They're all very, very creepy. All their completely different spin on horror, and all curated or written by Joe Hill.
Oh, goodness gracious. Okay, no, I have not. I have not read these.
Oh, great! I could give you so many recommendations, but the best place to start is Basket Full of Heads. Very pulpy '80s feel to it. It's just it's the best. It's so good.
Let's see, Basket Full of Heads.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And then, of course, I can't talk about horror comics without recommending Infidel by
took the words out of my mouth, my friend.
Oh my god, by Pornsack Pichashot and Aaron Campbell. Not just one of the best horror comics of the past decade, one of the best comics of the past decade. It is the only comic I've ever read that actually kept me up at night. It's a comic book that has legitimate jump scares. The way they play with pacing and page turns is incredible, and also happens to be written by a couple of awesome dudes. I got to interview them at San Diego Comic-Con. We had lunch, and I will tie this back into Star Wars because while we were in the middle of our interview, the 501st Legion had a massive march that completely disrupted the whole thing because all three of us fanboyed out.
That's so cool.
Full circle, brought it back to Star Wars.
All right, let's bring this back somewhat. Like I said, as someone who doesn't like horror, that's none of those comics are going to be crossing my face. So, Alyssa, is it challenging to be telling a story that is pretty far removed, at least story-wise, telling from the Skywalker saga, or do you find that more liberating? You're dealing with a story that's where the Skywalker saga is what we're used to in the movies, but you're kind of tangential to that. Do you like that, or would you prefer to be more in the mix?
Honestly, I really love it. Because I think that there's so much that is already established with the Skywalker saga. And I'm sort of out playing in the wilds. So there's a lot of potential to do a lot of weird, crazy stuff that makes me really excited. That I think that, if I was working closer to like sort of our main Star Wars path, because there are more like story data points that you kind of have to stay really close to. You know, there's a lot of room for innovation on a very like sort of small, precise scale. But because, you know, there's so much less of that pressure with Aphra, I can just kind of swing for the fences and see whether or not it lands, which is really exciting.
It's a big galaxy. So not everybody needs to know each other.
Yeah.
That's part of. Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, no, I was just going to say, like, I love family drama. Like, I'm so here for family drama. But the good thing about not writing it is that I get to enjoy it as a fan.
That's awesome.
That's part of what I love about this run so much as well. And I think that's something I said to Connor and Jim when we reviewed the first issue, is I feel like Aphra's been mixed up with the Rebel Alliance and the Empire, that it feels like she's really like I mean, it's always been her comic, but it's no longer like relying on the added excitement and drama of characters like Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader. Like, she's the full star of the show with this run so far. Like, we're not relying on other characters. It's just fully being supported by her and her supporting cast of like new characters, which is really cool because yes, we love all those characters we grew up with, but it's nice to see that you're introducing like so many new characters and giving us a full-fledged story without any of the stuff that we're used to.
Oh, thank you. That makes me really happy. Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm really excited over the fact that I got the chance to build a lot of new people in Aphra's life. I think it's just so much fun. And you know, something I loved about The Mandalorian too is that it was so far removed from, you know, everything else that we'd sort of seen with Star Wars that it was able to be its own story on its own. And that's something that I value a lot as a short story writer. And I think hopefully is something that I'm going to try to bring to Aphra going forward.
Yeah, it's been great. Like, I love watching her admire Detta, like, conning people. Like, she's good. That's exactly how I would have done it. Like, I love the interactions there where she's like admiring how much of a con artist this person is.
Yeah. And speaking of new characters, I've praised for one, and I have a question about another. The praise is for, and this might surprise some people, I love Just Lucky. Like, probably my favorite character in this new run so far, because you can always tell, like, he's not exactly trustworthy, but he's also not really a bad person. Like, and I just, like, I love the little hints that have been dropped in the last couple issues. I'm like, oh, he's doing everything he's doing for a reason. And I love the complexity of him. And right now, I can't wait to see, like, how the, I don't want to spoil anything for readers, so I'm going to try to dance around it, but, like,
oh.
Are you actually dancing, or
you might have muted yourself, Connor?
I like the fact that his name is Just Lucky. That's just Star Wars enough, and yet it's like perfect.
Thank you. I love him. I think he's one of my favorite new characters like that I've gotten to write. I'm not supposed to play favorites, but like I really like him.
I'll ask. Connor, I think, whacked his mic in excitement, and we can't get his audio now.
Can you
so
hear me
I'll
now?
ask. Oh, there he is.
I'm back.
Oh, and he's gone.
I'm not cutting this, just so you know.
Oh, no.
I'll ask his question for him. But he wanted to know, with Professor Eustatia's droid TA-418, is TA a play on teacher's assistant?
Yep.
Awesome.
Yeah, I was a TA once, although not a small droid. So I was really excited that the story group folks were down for me pitching this, not only an archaeological rumble, but also like weird academia, because the Shadow University is from the first run. They're like mentioned briefly during the auction for the Crystal of Ur. So they're one of the parties that's there when everything goes down and things get dicey. But that's it. There's like no other information about them. So I was like, yeah, let's take that element and run with it. Let's see what happens.
That's cool. I used to be a TA as well, and I live in weird academia. So,
Go ahead, Jim.
So I was gonna say, do you have any other, like I guess like what's it, Easter egg character names that you'd be up for disclosing, or not at this time?
I think you might have to wait to see. Possibly in the next arc.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No. We get it. We totally get it. My last question about your droid is, I loved. I don't know if you played Jedi Fallen Order, but I loved BD1. I thought he was adorable, and I just loved the way he was designed and that he worked with Cal throughout the game. Did you get to help decide what type of droid would be in the comic, or was that more up to Marika?
Yeah, I did get to decide, which was really cool. And I also fell in love with BD1. And I knew that I wanted Eustacia to have some kind of droid that would be able to go with her on archaeological expeditions, something that would be able to help her, like, scan and keep records of stuff. So it had to be sort of all-terrain and hardy, and also like a nice companion too. So saw BD1 and I was like, yeah, like that.
Awesome.
So this one's a little bit different. The head shape's a little different, and I love it. But yeah, no, that was definitely I was lucky
Very
enough
deliberate.
to get to. Yeah, it was very deliberate, and I don't know, droid designing is really fun.
Yeah, as someone that has built a droid in Galaxy's Edge in Batu, I will strongly agree with that. I had so much fun doing it, and I was like, man, it would be so cool to do this on like a much more intricate and detailed level. But yeah, you obviously have a more unique and different experience putting a droid into a comic book, so that's gonna be so cool, though.
It's really neat. And I think that it was really cool. Like, Marika and I worked together. I was like, yeah, look, it's kind of like this. I don't know. And, she came back with a bunch of different sketches, and we went back and forth with, our editorial team at Marvel, Mark and Tom, and also with the Lucasfilm story group, until we all had something that we felt good about.
Awesome. So I just have one final question for you. And I think I know the answer based on some of your other answers so far, but I have to ask, is there any upcoming events, characters, creatures, artifacts that you'd like to provide fans with a small hook or teaser for?
Well, I will say this because the solicits have gone out. I'm very excited for Domina Tag. I am very excited for Tag family drama. Not Skywalker family drama, but Tag family drama.
Tags are going back too. That's they're old Legends characters.
Yeah.
I didn't even know that they were Legends characters. That's new for me.
Oh, you're back.
Hi! I don't know what happened, but I'm back.
Hello, welcome back.
I'm afraid to speak again because I don't know if it's going to cut out randomly.
Oh no.
But I do want to chime in really quickly. I knew it about TA. I knew it. I'm very proud. I was reading it the other day and I was like, oh my gosh, it's Teacher's Assistant. I get it. But anyway, yes, the family drama aspect of the Tag family, that's gonna be very rad. And I also saw in the solicits, and I was actually saying to Jim and JJ before you got on that Song of Staros appears to be coming back, and that's going to be pretty awesome.
Oh yeah. Oh, it's gonna be so good.
Yeah, we were all very high on that in the audio drama.
I loved that. That made me so happy. I was looking for. I actually ended up reading the audio drama in part because I was like, heck yeah, audio drama, but also because I was looking for as much sauna reference as I could. And after the audio drama, I was just like, I'm in. I'm sold. Like, absolutely.
Yeah, the most of their relationship was in the audio drama. Like, we don't get much of it elsewhere.
Mm-hmm. I think expect relationship drama is all I'm gonna say.
Love it.
There's definitely going to be relationship drama, and my one teaser is it won't just be Aphra.
Ooh, all right.
I'm really excited.
That's a juicy teaser. I like that.
Can't wait. All right, Alyssa, thank you so much for being on the show. We really appreciate you taking your time to be here with us today.
Thank you so much for having me. This was a ton of fun.
One last thing before we go. Is there any place that you'd like people to get a hold of you or follow you on Twitter or ignore you on the internet or something?
Yeah, definitely find me on Twitter. I'm most active on Twitter. You can find a lot of my stuff online. But if you want to actually find me, I'm like pretty much only on Twitter.
And thank you again. I think I can speak for the three of us collectively when we say we just really appreciate the work you've done on the character so far. She's near and dear to all of our hearts, and you've just done such a fantastic job with it.
Thank you. That means a lot to me. I was a little bit nervous about, taking over after such an incredible run by such incredible people. I was like, that's a lot of pressure. But I've just been super honored by all of the positive response from people. And it makes me really happy because I really enjoy writing these. And it's just awesome that other people are reading it and they're happy too.
All right, guys. So we hope you had as much fun today as we did. I feel like I say this every time, but I think it's only a good thing that I repeat myself when I say that I think that's my favorite interview that we've done so far about one of my favorite characters. And as you know, Jim and Connor also love her very much as well. Thank you again to Alyssa Wong for being on the show. She was an absolutely fantastic guest, super patient with our nonsense, stuck around and answered a ton of questions. If you liked what you heard today and you're not reading Doctor Aphra, go buy Doctor Aphra. It's a fantastic comic book, an amazing character. And as you heard throughout the episode, I'll say it again, Alyssa is knocking it out of the park with her writing right now and the adventures that she has Aphra going on. So you can find all of us on AIPTcomics.com, where you can see reviews of the Doctor Aphra comic, as well as the other Star Wars comic books, plenty of other comic books, the most anywhere every Wednesday, lots of other great Star Wars and pop culture content. You can find Alyssa on Twitter at Crash Wong, and you can find the show on Twitter at AIPT Comics. So once again, thanks for being with us today, guys. We had a great time, and we'll see you next time.